Michael and his team of Bigfoot investigators entered into an area of the Sierras in which there had been substantial Bigfoot activity in the past. Actions in the form of wood knocks, howls, branch snapping, and the like, but no formal sightings of the physical creature. They had a 4-person team that night, equipped with night vision, infrared, and sound detection equipment. They were loaded for bear. That night, should they see a Bigfoot, they would be ready. 2 of the men in their team were about 50 yards away from Michael and another team member named Sammy at around 3 a.m. when the men were startled by a loud crunch breaking the silence where they were standing. Sammy and Michael turned immediately after hearing the sound coming from their left, just in time to catch a Bigfoot that appeared to be standing up from where he had been sitting on a downed tree. Michael was able to get to his infrared and he saw the signature and the size of this massive being. But after only a few seconds, the beast bolted and ran into the trees at a ridiculous rate of speed. Then it was gone. Immediately, they were on the radio reporting to the other members what had happened, summoning them to the area right away. The other members of the team were there in minutes and they were standing shoulder to shoulder surveying the dark forest, looking and listening with their equipment, but seeing and hearing nothing. But then, all of a sudden, the whole forest in front of them, about a 200-foot wide section, lit up with blue light. It looked like 20 cars lined up in a row with really bright blue headlights. There was no sound, just the light. It was so creepy that Michael's hair stood up on end. All the men were really scared, but it didn't stop there. Suddenly, figures started appearing from within the blue lights. There were several of them, and they started moving slowly into the woods. They all moved together in unison and they stopped in the same spot, with the blue light outlining their shapes. Each figure looked like a Bigfoot, but they were slightly different in size. They all had cone-shaped heads, long arms, and huge bent shoulders. The men were frozen. They couldn't speak or move. Michael felt like he was stuck in place, not scared, but just fascinated in a strange way. It was like a standoff, with no one moving. All of a sudden, white orbs of light started appearing, coming out of the blue lights. They started moving around the trees near the Bigfoot creatures, but all was silent. They couldn't understand how the lights were there because there was no way someone could have put them there. The forest was filled with nothing but tall trees for miles and miles. Eventually, the orbs went back into the blue light and everything went black. No one said anything, not even Michael. He started wondering if he was alone, and if all this was just a dream. He thought maybe that he'd never even gone into the forest with his friends. Then, Sammy started groaning and throwing up, which quickly brought everybody back to reality. They realized they had dropped their equipment on the ground and they started looking around while taking care of Sammy. They didn't talk about what happened to them until days later because it was just so hard for them to believe. Tasmania, Australia, summer of 2021. The witness, Tyson, had a seriously strange encounter. He was staying in a cozy little cottage owned by his boss, surrounded by the beautiful forest near the Batman Bridge. One night, after finishing his supper, Tyson went to bed, laying on his right side facing the window. But something woke him up suddenly. When he opened his eyes, he saw a small gray alien standing right beside the window staring at him. To make matters even weirder, Tyson noticed that he couldn't move and the gray alien had some sort of mind control power over him. Eventually, Tyson drifted back to sleep. The next thing he remembers was waking up under a tree in his yard. He felt dizzy and groggy as though he had been drugged, and he was only wearing his underwear. But how did he get there? As Tyson tried to make sense of it all, 2 familiar faces appeared in his yard. One was a co-worker, and the other was his partner, even though they had split up some time ago. Tyson found it odd that they were both there in the middle of the night, and to make things even stranger, everything around Tyson seemed hazy, like static on a television screen. As he looked at his coworker, Tyson realized that it wasn't really his coworker at all, but it was some sort of illusion created by something or someone. It felt like the illusion was trying to stop Tyson from entering his own house, but he managed to push past it and head towards the back door. Out of nowhere, a gigantic hexagon-shaped spaceship appeared from the east. It split into 2 parts, with one landing in the yard and the other hovering higher up in the sky. The spaceship had bright lights that terrified Tyson. He sprinted towards the glass door and rushed inside of his house. But as soon as he crossed the threshold, everything went silent. No noise, no spaceship, no strange people. Just darkness and quietness. Tyson was left wondering, had it all been a dream? He thought maybe that he had sleepwalked outside, like he did sometimes, and he felt a bit tipsy, even though he hadn't been drinking that night. He checked the yard and everything seemed to be calm, so he went back to bed and fell back to sleep. When he woke up, Tyson felt an intense heaviness in the room. He opened his eyes and realized that he was floating 6 inches from the ceiling. It was like something out of a sci-fi movie. As Tyson regained consciousness, he found himself lying on a chrome bench. He was still lying on his right side, and standing right there beside him was another non-human creature that looked just like the stereotypical gray alien. Tyson sensed that the gray's job was to keep him paralyzed using its mind. They were in a white room, and there were 3 other beings present, all dressed in white trench coats or lab coats. One of them seemed to be the leader, with some kind of emblem on his shoulder. He overheard a faint conversation between the leader and the grays keeping him paralyzed. At one point, the leader said something like, "This is my favorite part," or "This is the best part." Strangely enough, that caused the gray to lose focus on Tyson, and he had a brief moment of movement. When he looked back, he saw the beings doing some kind of operation on his legs. They even inserted something large into his thigh, and after that, he couldn't remember anything else. Tyson woke up at around 4 a.m. and walked into the kitchen to find his sliding glass door standing slightly open. That was strange because he had always made sure to lock it. It confirmed to Tyson that his experience was real. He went to work at 6 o'clock that morning and immediately told his coworker Rick all about what had happened. Rick was so intrigued that he invited Tyson to come over after work for a beer to share more details. Tyson agreed, and they stayed up late, drinking and talking. Tyson ended up crashing on Rick's couch that night. But guess what? The same eerie thing happened again. Tyson woke up in the middle of the night to find an alien standing right there in the middle of the living room. But this time, Rick walked in at that exact moment, looking for a late-night drink. Unfortunately for Rick, he missed seeing the alien because it vanished into thin air. Tyson never saw that being again. But in the months that followed the incident, he started having trouble with his legs, which he'd never had before. Tyson described the creatures he encountered as the typical grays you would see in the movies. They had weird-shaped heads and big black eyes, and a small slit for a mouth. And their skin was a blue-green color, and he said they stood about 4 to 5 feet tall.